What's up, everybody? Crazy here, coming at you with another support video today. We're going to be talking about wards and what kind of wards in Predecessor you can utilize to really improve that gameplay for not only you, but your team as a whole. And this video kind of can be utilized in other roles as well. ADCs have wards, mid laners, off laners. We're going to be showing wards across the entire map, not only that supports can utilize, but other roles as well. So these are aggressive wards, neutral wards, and defensive wards that you might want to use, and different kinds of reasons why you might want to put a ward up against a wall versus putting a ward out in the open to get as many paths as possible, right? So there's areas in the game where you can get 3 to 4 pathways versus a ward that might be straight up against a wall. So you can, deflect people dewarding it as easy. So we'll get into that in the video, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and follow for more videos in the future. So without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, everybody, we're going to be talking about supports and warding today. And the first ward that I want to talk to you guys about is going to be this initial support ward that we went over a little bit in the support laning video today. It's going to be the support ward that covers in multiple pathways at the beginning of the game. So this initial support ward, as you can see, if I would place this ward here, you can see it covers the bottom of the staircase here. It covers the bottom of the staircase here. It covers a little bit down this path, covers a little bit down this path, right? So if the jungler at the start of the game decides to take his red buff and come down the staircase and move towards duo lane, you're going to see him come down the staircase and move towards duo. If you see him come down the staircase and move towards mid, you're going to see him come down the staircase and move towards mid. You're going to see him come down the staircase and go into the Fangtooth pit, turn right, or move towards the mid lane as well. So this initial ward at the start of the game can be very important to see that initial pressure that some junglers like to go out. If they do the red buff 2 camp, come towards dual lane, red buff 5 can't come towards dual lane. So that's a very useful ward. Another one is this top ward here that you can also utilize. You can also utilize to catch the fog wall rotation here. So as you can see, once again, this ward will cover the fog wall down towards that path there. You can see it on the wall. It'll cover the fog wall path down here. And if you keep coming back, it's gonna be about right here. You'll see that fog wall. It also covers down the staircase. So you'll be able to see the fog wall path here. Most junglers aren't going to hug that wall enough for you to miss. So that's a good ward to have at the top of the staircase if you want to do that at the beginning of the game, to cover the fog wall, to cover the stairs drop down area, and to cover this initial if he crosses this path or double backs towards the 2 camp. What some mid laners like to do and what I do not like to do as of late is drop a ward up here. And the only reason is this ward is a very common ward, and if this jungler is smart, he can actually kill this 2 camp, pop his sentry, and kill the ward at the same time using his cleave. It'll cleave the ward down and he won't lose any damage on his 2 camp. So I actually don't like dropping this ward, even though, it gives you vision that the jungler is there. Great, who cares? You can just drop down into the jungle and just hear or see him on his red buff if you want to get that vision. You can just listen to hear him hitting the 2 camp.
Avenge them.
A ward that I do kind of like to do is dropping it here, though. You can drop it around here, and you will be able to see if a jungler is waiting for you by the river buff or coming down the staircase towards the river buff, getting ready to get that 3-minute timer. Another ward is this one here that I mentioned briefly, which will cover the staircase up. It also covers the jump over. If they pop over the plant and land in the river, this ward here will catch them as they land, so you'll know if they came over the wall. And then it also covers your back route towards your blue side or towards your fog wall. So all of these wards are pretty good neutral wards in the game. They're not really defensive wards. They're neutral in the middle of the map to help your team if you know anyone's going to try and cross your team's side of the map. Now, a little bit more of a defensive ward is this one to cover your backside fog wall in mid lane, and to cover they are actually going to do an invade of some kind. Another defensive ward is actually going to be this ward here, almost on the plant, and the reason for that is you'll be able to see if they come from the mid lane try. You'll be able to see if they take the path towards the duo lane, and you'll be able to see if they come up here towards the blue buff to try and get a blue buff invade. Now, all of these wards aren't necessarily, this defensive ward isn't necessarily that something you'll put in the early game, nor is this defensive ward here More of these neutral wards is what you're looking to put in the early game, or maybe that little bit of an aggressive ward here. Not really a super aggressive ward, but it is a little bit more of an aggressive ward. More like these neutral wards you put in the early game, and more towards those middle stages of the game when you're trying to get some of those objective control situations. You want to get these neutral wards out to see if they're heading towards the objective. It is really good to get some of the aggressive wards out, like this ward that we were talking about. People sometimes put up the 2 camp. Sometimes people will put one up here as well, so they will see the fog wall and towards the 2 camp. Instead of just putting it down here, this one's more common. Sometimes the jungler will sweep towards the lane and they will miss the ward up here if you put it up here. So sometimes you do want to put it in those little bit off areas and not necessarily in the same spots. You can get a more aggressive ward, obviously getting one up here. You can see when the jungler comes into his red and which side of red he goes, or get one just, you know, up on the red buff itself is nice. Getting one over here towards the back of the 5 camp to see when they're doing the 5 camp, and if he's heading towards the dual lane or if he's heading back towards the 2 camp is also nice for some aggressive wards, depending on what you're trying to do in the game. If you have that dual lane pressure, or if you have that mid lane pressure, or if you're just trying to set up for a Fang Tooth, those are sometimes nice to get set up. And in some of these situations when you're trying to posture, and we talk about getting these multiple areas set up here, right? Like hey, I want to get as much vision as possible, right? You set it here, you're going to get as much vision this way and this way as possible, so you'll know, hey, there's a guy peeking the right side of the wall, there's a guy peeking the left side of the wall, I get as much vision as possible. If you set it here, you're not going to get that same vision, right? Come on, get away from me. If you set it here, you're not going to get the vision up the staircase.
Snuffed out like a weak flame.
If you set it here, you're not going to get the vision in the river buff, or in the river. But there are reasons why you may want to set a ward on the edge of a wall like this. Let me just deal with this guy real quick. Okay. So, the reason why you may want to set a ward on the wall like this instead of in the open is because if you set it on the wall like this, it is much harder for the enemy team to get a D ward off, right? You set it in the open like this and they place a ward down, or they have a sweeper from the top of the staircase, they can get an easy D ward just hitting the ward from, you know, any safe point. They can be on the top of the staircase hitting the ward with their 1500 range character, whatever is necessary. If you put it up against the wall, right, you have it, same concept here. If you have a ward here, they can stand all the way back here and hit it. They can stand all the way back here and land autos on it. Versus if you have it here, right, and you're trying to bait the corner or see them come around, they now have to walk all the way around to get this D ward off. And if they have to come all the way around, you can have you and your teammates sitting here waiting for them to come around. And as soon as they come around, you can jump on them and chase them back into their jungle looking for a kill. So there are situations where you can bait a ward instead of always placing it in the open to get as much vision as possible. You can use this ward as kind of a bait situation, where if the enemy team does try to go for that D ward, you jump out of a different corner and you use it to go for the kill, because now they're in a vulnerable situation instead of being in a completely safe situation getting the vision denial. So there are different times, like early game, you want to get the most vision possible. You want to see this route, you want to see this route, or for instance down here, you want to see the route towards the staircase, you want to see the route towards the mid lane, route towards the duo, and the bottom of the staircase. Meanwhile, towards the maybe 8-minute mark, when you're trying to get a Fang Tooth, right, your team's trying to start the Fang Tooth, or the 20-minute mark when you're trying to do Primordial or Primal Fang, you may want to put it on the wall itself, so when they come down the staircase, they hit the ward and you can, you know, they can't de-ward it for free, right, if you're trying to bait a corner. Or even top of the staircase here, right, they're going to be coming around the dual lane, top of the staircase here like we have, or even here, because if you put it here and they're coming from their 2 camp, they still do have to come and de-ward from here. They're a little bit safer, but you still can be sitting around this corner come up and look for that easy kill. Now to head over towards the Orb Prime side, there's going to be a lot of similar warding situations that go on. You're going to have those defensive wards, those neutral wards, and those, you know, more aggressive wards. They're just going to be flipped, right? You got your defensive ward here to see all the different entrances. You have your defensive ward here to see all the different entrances. You have a defensive ward here to see if someone's going to be sitting this corner here waiting for you on the river buff. You have a more neutral ward here. You see if someone's going to be sitting on this corner or if someone's going to be coming down this route. You have a more aggressive ward here to see if anyone's sitting on this corner or this corner. You have an aggressive ward up here to see if anyone's going to be coming down towards this staircase, coming into the blue side jungle, or heading towards their blue buff.
We've got a tower of theirs under siege.
You have your aggressive ward over here to see which routes they're coming from on this side. And I didn't mention this on the other side. You do have a ward right here as well. The people coming from the Fangtooth or the Orb Prime, and it will also cover your fog wall. So if I place this ward here, it covers my fog wall. So if you're playing laning phase, this is a helpful ward. So you know if somebody's sitting on the fog wall. You will also know if somebody's rotating from the Orb Pit or from the Fangtooth Pit. This ward here, as you can see, helps cover the route up the staircase, and it also helps cover your fog wall. Now you will notice it doesn't cover all of your fog wall, which is a problem. In order to cover all of your fog wall route up, you do have to get a little bit more towards the pillar, and they can still hug the wall. There's not really a great ward you can do to cover the staircase up and the wall, fog wall itself. You can try to get a little bit more aggressive with it, but if you do this, they can always hug the wall down in the pit and catch you off guard. So I believe it's just usually better to maybe put it a little bit more in the pit vision, more so than the fog wall vision. More than likely people aren't going to be hugging this wall the whole way up when they're coming for a gank. I'm saying that now, people know they might be able to do that, but it's less likely. All of these different vision tricks and all of these different wards that you do, they're kind of preferential, right? Different situations account for different kind of wards that you need to do. Junglers take different routes in different games. Sometimes you have junglers that really love to take this route over the wall here, right? You have your Rampages, your Wukongs, your Feng Maos. They love, even when there's not a plant there, they love to come over this wall. Polaris as well. They don't even take the plant, they just jump over the wall. And then they come and look for this gank here. So if you're against some characters that are really mobile, having your ward here to see that jump over that river buff wall into the behind gank is really valuable. Having this ward here to see if they come down the staircase and come towards your mid laner, or come down the staircase and come into the pit is really valuable. Sometimes it's important having this ward. It really just depends on the game and how you see the game playing out and how you see the game flowing. If you know what kind of jungler you're playing against, if you played against them quite a bit, or if you just all in all have wards that you prefer. Again though, just make sure that whenever you are warding, you do take into account what state of the game, like what time the game is, right? You don't want to be putting an open ward always whenever you're going for objectives that anyone can just walk up and de-ward for free. Sometimes you do want to put those defensive wards into corners that people have to step up into a more vulnerable position where you can look for a play on, right? Put them against walls where people have to come down into vulnerable positions, right? And if they're looking for that D-ward so they can deny vision, you can step out from behind a corner as they're trying to deny vision and look for the pit. These are kind of the basics to warding in the game. There's really not much in-depth things that you can do with warding in this game. It's all about just the basics. Once you know the basics of why you should ward in open areas, for instance, just getting the most vision as possible, and which areas are really nice to have wards on. For instance, this jump over right here. Once you have that ward in that spot that covers this jump over and clips the person as they come over the wall, it's very nice because it helps your mid laner out. Helps cover the route behind them. It helps cover the route into the Orb Prime buffs, into the Fangtooth buffs. And these wards are very essential when it comes, like vision is very essential when it comes to MOBAs. Knowing where junglers are, knowing where mid laners are, knowing these rotation patterns, very useful for your game. And I know a lot of supports really struggle with, you know, putting wards out in games. And I know a lot of mid laners and soul laners and ADCs, they don't put a lot of wards out either. You can really tell if a support is doing, you know, having a good vision control just by going and seeing how many wards they place that game. They're sitting around 10 or 11 wards in a game as a support. That's not near enough. Not even remotely close to enough. You should be sitting around 20, 30 wards per game at least as a support, and with some denials in there as well. You know, if the game goes any sort of distance, just the more and more wards you get is very, very useful. And if you upgrade your crest, and you have the soulstone wards, remember those reset every single time you back to base. There will be times whenever you want to go out, place all 3 of your wards as a support, back to base to reset your wards and your vision, get all 3 of them back up, and then get back out on the map with all 3 of your vision available to you. You don't want to sit there on the map without any vision available to you, because if your vision gets dewarded, then you have no more vision to place, right? There are times you want to go out, place all 3 of your vision wards, back to base, reset, come back out, get ready for the objective, come sit back in lane, go gank mid lane, whatever your next goal is as a support. That way you are good to go. If you have a ward that gets dewarded, immediately place another one up next on the next objective, or buy your mid laner who you think is going to get ganked, buy your off laner who you think is going to get gone after next, or your jungler who you're trying to defend and invade on, right? If you think his blue side's going to get invaded, maybe put a defensive ward up for him. Just whatever you think is necessary in the game at the time. These vision basics are super important. Having vision on the map is super important. We don't want to go on the map and see very dark maps all the time. Supports can keep vision up 24/7 in the game once they get their crest upgraded. So there is no reason for you to permanently have your map dark unless you just have absolutely no control in the entire game on any point of the map. If they are getting if you just lost a team fight and they have all the objective control and they're pushing towards your base, you can even get these super defensive wards out right here, because this ward here will defend if your team is trying to defend a tier 2. It'll defend this fog wall. You can just come up here to the fog wall, throw the ward out past the fog wall, so you know if people are going to try to come towards your tier 2 and, you know, kill the guy that's clearing the wave that's defending the tier 2. You have the ward here like we showed earlier, again just showing if someone's coming through the fog wall while you're defending the tier 2. Here again, just showing if anyone's coming behind you to die while you're defending the tier 2, and on the other side of that fog wall, again to showcase if anyone's coming behind the tier 2 to dive while you're defending the tier 2, right? Sometimes placing them super defensively if you're trying to defend that orb prime, trying to defend that primordial buff, is really important as well. Not just, you know, when you're trying to be aggressive, right? These wards are also important when you are trying to be aggressive as well. You know, when you're sieging a tier 2, if you don't have a teammate that's sitting in the jungle here, you don't want to be flanked. Let's say your ADC is sitting here hitting the tower and you don't have any vision on the other side of this fog wall. What if the jungler comes by and goes a stun and hits your ADC in the back? So having a ward here and a ward on that fog wall, also important. So just vision at all times is extremely important in the game. So it's just something that everybody should utilize at all points, especially supports with your just complete accessibility to wards. Once you have your crest online, make sure you're putting them up always on fog walls, in gaps, on walls, whatever is necessary for your team. I stress it a lot because it is very important, and I know a lot of people just don't do it, and it is very painful to a lot of players, especially junglers. I had to get into an argument with one of my junglers the other day about him wanting to go wards instead of having sentry because his support just wasn't warding. And I appreciate the effort because he wants vision on the map and he thinks it's super important, but denying vision is just as important. So junglers really should have this because we want to deny enemy vision as much as possible. Support should have this should have wards and put out as much vision as possible. That's just something to keep in mind, is as a support, make sure you're getting out as much vision as possible, and it will really help achieve the types of picks and map control that you're looking for in a game. So thank you for listening to my rambling, and again, if you enjoyed even part of the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.